This is an e-content study material on Prerna Baksh's poem Gone and Buried. About the writer. Prerna Baksh is a sociolinguist writer, translator, activist of Indian origin, presently living in Mecca. Her works were published in over 3 dozen journals and magazines, most recently in Silver Birch Press, Wilderness House Literary Review, Kabul Press, Misfit Magazine, Peril Magazine, Asian Australian Arts and Culture and Word Gathering, a journal of disability, poetry and literature. She is a 2-time Pushcart Prize nominee and the author of the recently released full-length poetry collection Burnt Rotis with Love, which was longlisted for the Erbake Press Poetry Award in UK and cited as one of the 9 poetry collections that will change the way you see the world by Bustle in the US. Burnt Rotis with Love alludes to a 13-year-old girl in Pakistan, Aniga, who was killed by her father and her brother for not making round rotis. Prerna Baksh's debut collection, Burnt Rotis with Love, was published in 2016. Her poems featured in the collection have appeared in many literary journals, magazines, and anthologies across the world. Bakshi offers a refreshing perspective on feminism and the wider world, enlightening readers with its undeniable South Asian roots. Burnt Rotis with Love gives a unique narrative, for the stories it holds are the shared experiences of women. Background of the poem. This poem, Gone and Buried, figures in the collection Burnt Rotis with Love. The background of this poem is the mutual genocide that occurred during the partition. In August 1947, India was partitioned into 2 independent nation states, Hindu majority India and Muslim majority Pakistan. Immediately, there began one of the greatest migrations in human history as millions of Muslims trekked to West and East Pakistan, while millions of Hindus and Sikhs headed in the opposite direction. Many hundreds of thousands never made it. Across the Indian subcontinent, communities that had coexisted for almost a millennium attacked each other in a terrifying outbreak of sectarian violence, with Hindus and Sikhs on one side and Muslims on the other. The carnage was especially intense, with massacres, arson, forced conversions, mass abductions, and savage sexual violence. This poem was written keeping the partition of Punjab and India in mind. The poet recalls, I quote, "My parents are the children of partition that was responsible for causing the greatest transmigration in the history of humankind," I unquote. In this poem, Prerna Baksh describes the collective ordeal experienced by women during the partition, which had been a moment of unforgettable trauma for millions of people in the subcontinent. Some 75,000 women were raped and many of them were then disfigured or dismembered. Analysis of the poem. They floated away like flimsy paper boats, like lost fireflies, like chiffon sari pallus and dupattas with the wind. They were buried like unsent letters, hiding away, stuffed at the back of a wardrobe, like trapped bodies under a pile of disaster rubble. Bakshi is a fervent feminist with a unique gift of language, and this poem is at its most beautiful from the onset. She compares the physically abused and tortured women to flimsy paper boats, fireflies, chiffon sari pallus and dupattas. Their fragile nature, which can be subdued easily, is explained through these words. But women are truly always a precious treasure buried and unnoticed by the bestiality of the patriarchal society, which never wished even to recall the plight of women caught in the vortex of violence, like unsent letters or the trapped bodies under rubble, which are easily forgotten. These floated away, buried stories of many women, when will they be heard? When will the smell of their stories fill the stiff air? When will their stories get dug out of the rubble so they could bear witness to the past and the present? Bakshi's analogies make reference to the voices that have been buried away, a series of secrets that must not be spoken of. She wants their unsung stories to surface and bear witness to the communal rites and faith-based killings that occurred during the partition. Bakshi uses powerful words in a storytelling form to grasp the reader by the face and demand that they see modern society for femicide that it is committing. Let women narrate their stories themselves. Let the bloody stench of their stories choke you, gag you a little. Let the secrets be unburied. Let the demons of these women's lives haunt you a little. Bakshi calls for the history of women who have been buried like secrets to be unburied and haunt us a little. Yet it is these images that must be rescued from falling into an endless oblivion. The oblivion is a space where one forgets that one has forgotten and willingly erased the realities that would cause entire worlds to fall apart. Bakshi converses with our collective memory and speaks of the violent histories that cannot be forgotten, even if they are silenced and buried time and again. This poem is a call to action for everyone to hear the horror stories, the hard times, and the harder times that women have to talk about. To conclude, she recalls how partition was responsible for causing the greatest transmigration in the history of humankind. And in this poem, we find that Bakshi has a very revolutionary spirit. She also relates to a system or a social order which is oppressive in nature. And thus her poems illustrate or documents the experiences of victimized women and tries to dismantle the modern hypocrisy. And she has written stories that deserve to be heard and spread. Thank you.